right now we are working in the king's castle, and yeah, we're gonna keep doing that because it's not done. The king for the alpha wolves that I am creating the story for, we are going to be designing his castle. This is his visiting throne. Basically, when wolves come to visit, he'll come here and he'll sit down and he'll listen to what they have to say. And then, depending on if he likes it or not, he'll say you can stay or you can leave. And yeah, he has that authority. He's the king. And they listen because, well, they have no choice in the matter. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get rid of this. We're going to build that wall this way. Basically, his entire castle is kind of like living inside of a cave, sort of. Yeah, he's got modern day amenities and things like doors or whatever, but I mean, yeah, they're not like doors. They're like wooden doors made of wood. I guess if you want to be creative in your own right, you would say like driftwood doors. You know, the super flat driftwood that you get. You can craft into stuff to make surfboards or whatever. Yeah, that kind of wood. So, and that would be kind of the same concept for the doors that the king has. Yeah, the king's name is Chief for now until he retires. It'll go to the next king in line and everything else. So, the castle can't change. It is what it is. It's stuck the way it is, and it can't change or be different or anything like that. So, yeah. And facing where my voice changes, I just have a couple rid of the last. I'll be Hmm. Yeah, we are gonna make his throne room. So, this here is his visiting throne room. It's where wolves come to visit. Now, when he's conducting actual wolf business for his wolf pack, he is going to be doing it in the main throne room. It's gonna look imposing and stuff. I just have to make it large, round, and spherical at some points. Yeah, just gotta make it, that's all.
After finishing with the new lights, I met back with Winter, feeling better than I had in moons. His cold demeanor hadn't shifted as he said,
Good. You're free to stay in camp and rest. We'll be out later, when the moon touches the sky. Meet at the camp's entrance to join the night patrol.
The mention of night patrol made my ears flick. It wasn't a task given lightly. Night patrols were dangerous, meant to ensure the pack's safety while the rest slept. I had never been allowed on one before, and though the significance wasn't lost on me, exhaustion from the day's work dulled any enthusiasm I might have felt. Bowing my head, I murmured,
"Yes, Winter,"
and returned to my den. Once inside, I collapsed onto my bedding, sleep claiming me quickly. My dreams carried me to a peaceful place, fields of vibrant flowers encircling a spruce forest. The warm scent of pine filled the air, and I walked slowly, savoring the calm. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt no weight on my chest, no sense of failure. Lying down in the soft grass, I let the peace wash over me. A sharp bark shattered my dream. I tumbled out of my den, scrambling to my paws.
"Yes, sir, I'm ready."
I barked automatically, shaking sleep from my head. But it wasn't Winter standing before me. It was Granite. His commanding presence filled the space, his voice firm and direct.
"Let's go. We're late. Can't waste time."
I bowed deeply, my stomach knotting under his sharp gaze.
"Yes, Granite,"
I said, quickly falling in behind him as he turned and strode toward the camp's entrance. His movements were precise, purposeful, leaving no room for hesitation. As we approached the entrance, Granite barked,
"Cedar, take point."
The young warrior Alpha stepped forward without hesitation. His broad, brown frame seemed to gleam under the moonlight. He moved with confidence, his sharp gaze scanning the horizon for potential threats. I glanced at Granite, expecting him to join Cedar at the front, but instead, he fell back beside me, his pace steady. Tonight wasn't just a patrol. It was Cedar's test. Granite's voice cut through the quiet as we ran.
"When you're on moon patrol, you do a full sweep of all the borders. Every inch of this territory must be checked,"
he said sternly, his tone leaving no room for error.
"We check for signs of beasts, rogue wolves, and trespassing packs. These threats don't rest, and neither do we."
His eyes briefly met mine, and I felt the weight of his words.
This patrol isn't about convenience. It's about survival. Every wolf in this pack depends on us to ensure their safety while they sleep.
"Yes, Granite,"
I replied quickly, my voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside me. He continued, his tone firm but carrying a note of something deeper. Respect, perhaps, for the task at hand.
"Cedar will lead tonight. I trained him for this, and tonight I'll see if he's ready to take over this patrol when I step down. He's in full charge. My job is to make sure you don't get in the way."
His bluntness stung, but it also grounded me. As if sensing my unease, Granite added,
"Keep your paws to the ground, little one."
The phrase caught my attention, not just for its familiarity, but for the way Granite said it, almost like a mantra. I glanced at him, curious.
"It's a phrase I was taught as a young wolf."
Granite explained, his voice softer now, though no less commanding.
"An Omega elder used to say it to me. Keep your paws to the ground, they'd tell us. It means staying aware, staying grounded, ready to adjust your pace at a moment's notice. I've taught it to every wolf I've led on patrols since. It might just save your life."
The weight of his words settled over me as we pressed onward, the forest unfolding ahead of us. I kept my paws low and my senses sharp, determined to prove I belonged on this patrol, even as my heart pounded with the knowledge of its importance. We continued the patrol with Granite checking in with me to see if I was doing okay. I did my best to keep up with these wolves. Winter keeping pace between me and the others as we finally get to the North Cliffs. Here Cedar barks out orders.
Search for scents and keep a sharp eye out for boars.
Granite barks to the pup.
If you see one, you immediately let us alphas know.
Frost and Dusk were ordered by Cedar to keep a sharp eye. Their role was to keep watch while the others scent checked. I also used my nose to sniff the ground, air and scented trees, a few rabbits, and a scent I've never scented before. I heard Granite's bark as he spoke.
It's Boar. We're okay.
Then soon after, Granite said we're okay. Cedar barked.
All right, this area's clear next.
We continued northwest this time.
We're headed to the western ridge.
Cedar explained. Granite explained to me that
Bears are known for roaming in these areas. We don't have to worry too much about them unless they get close to our camp. They tend to stay by the river near the falls to catch their prey.
Cedar barks out.
Okay, check here. Everyone's got their orders.
This time I'm told to stay near Winter or Granite, so instead of getting to choose, Granite steps in and says,
Okay, pup, come check this spot for scents. What do you catch a scent of?
I do as asked and sniff. I haven't a clue.
What was this scent?
I turned and ask. He just laughs.
Oh, that's just the scent of a bear. No worries. It's days old past our border weeks ago.
Okay.
I look at him a little annoyed, but I was kinda interested in this wolf, so I asked Granite.
How do you know Winter?
Granite looks to Winter as if to ask him permission. Winter gives a slight bow, barley noticeable. If you weren't watching, you would have missed it. He then turns back to me and speaks while sitting.
Well, pup, I trained him.
I drop my jaw in disbelief.
Really?
I asked. He laughs.
Yes, but see, back then this pup had a lot on his mind. Had to help him through a lot.
I looked in awe.
Yep, I was once his mentor. So, pup, speaking of mentors, I know you and Wolfgang were once mentor and apprentice. So, want to tell me why you dismissed him so much when training with him?
Before I could say anything, Cedar barks.
Okay, we're done here next, to the southern marsh.
As we near the border for the southern marsh, I tell Granite,
I was arrogant. I was training with my peers Leaf and River, and a few others that they said they were all being trained as alphas, and I was the only one being trained.
Dusk barked out as we got to the southern marsh.
Pruge Wolf.
Zrania stood tall. They got into a growling match when Winter stepped in the rouge back off and fled the ground in territory. Dusk bowed.
Thanks, Winter. I appreciate the help.
And he turned back to keeping watch as the patrol works on scenting for any more dangers. Granite says,
You were saying
I was the only one being trained as an Omega, and I wasn't happy about it that, after confirming it with Wolfgang, I refused him as my mentor, that I wound up here. Ugh, I feel so foolish.
I dropped my head low.
I see, young wolf, you were jealous, but I wonder why do you think so low of an Omega? They have vital roles to play. Did you know that?
I tilted my head to the side and said,
Honestly, no. I mean, I know they're supposed to run away from danger to go get help from an alpha.
Frost broke the silence with a stern bark, his icy blue eyes narrowing as though my ignorance had struck a nerve.
Do so much more than you think.
He said, his voice steady but edged with restrained offense.
Our jobs are crucial. If we didn't rush to get help, then our teams, our friends, would suffer, or...
He turned his gaze to Winter, holding it for a moment longer than necessary. There was a weight in that glance, unspoken but heavy. Then Frost looked back at me, his tone dropping lower.
or worse.
I blinked, feeling the weight of his words settle heavily on my chest. My ears flattened, and I lowered my head in shame.
I didn't know.
I admitted softly.
I mean, I wasn't exactly given permission to go on patrols or join the hunting brigades. I was only ever taken to the training grounds. And Wolfgang, he let me come with him to the hunting grounds that time, but...
I trailed off, feeling even smaller under Frost's gaze.
I'm sorry,
I mumbled. A rumbling laugh broke the tension. Granite's voice, full of warmth and mirth, rolled over the group.
Ah, you young pups, always looking for greener grass on the other side.
His laughter carried the wisdom of countless moons, and it made the sharp edge of Frost's reprimand soften, if only slightly.
It's all right. Every pup makes mistakes, though I'll admit, yours was quite the spectacle.
His grin faded as he straightened, his tone shifting to something more serious.
But what matters is that you learn from them.
Frost gave one last glance, his expression unreadable, before turning back to his watch, his posture rigid and alert. Granite sat down, motioning for me to do the same.
Since you're here now, pup, it's high time you understood what it means to be an Omega and why it's a role worthy of respect.
I sat quietly, ears perked as Granite began his explanation.
An Omega isn't just some rank.
He started, his voice steady and deliberate.
It's a lifeline. Omegas are the ones who run when others can't. While Alphas hold the line, it's the Omegas who ensure the survival of the pack. They're the ones who sound the alarm, who fetch reinforcements, who risk their lives to bring back help when the pack is outnumbered or overpowered. They're the swiftest on their paws, and their endurance is unmatched. Without them, a patrol could be overrun, and the consequences.
He paused, his gaze distant for a moment before meeting mine again.
Well, you don't want to imagine the consequences.
He leaned in slightly, his tone softening.
And it's not just about running for help. Omegas are the ones who notice the details others overlook. A faint scent of a rogue wolf, the subtle shift in the wind that warns of a beast nearby. They're attuned to it all. Their vigilance keeps the pack safe, even when danger seems far away.
Granite sat back, his voice taking on a reverent quality.
I once knew an Omega, a true legend of our pack. Back when I was just a young apprentice cleaning the Elder's den, this wolf told me, "Keep your paws to the ground." I didn't understand it then, but as I grew, I realized it meant more than just running. It meant being present, being aware, and being ready to act when the moment called for it.
His gaze turned sharp, locking onto mine.
So tell me, pup, now that you've heard this, do you still think so low of an Omega's role?
I swallowed hard, the weight of his words pressing down on me.
No, sir.
I said quietly.
I didn't realize how important it was. I was wrong.
Granite's expression softened ever so slightly, and he gave a small nod.
Good. Then let this be the first lesson you carry forward.
Winter, who had remained silent throughout, finally spoke, his tone cold but measured.
The pack doesn't survive without every role being fulfilled. Alpha or Omega, it doesn't matter. What matters is doing what you're called to do and doing it right.
I nodded, feeling both humbled and determined. Granite's words, Frost's sharpness, and Winter's cold wisdom settled in my mind like pieces of a puzzle finally coming together. The patrol picked up speed as we moved through the southeastern marsh. The ground grew softer beneath our paws, water seeping up with each step. Cedar barked sharply from the front, his tone commanding.
Alphas, form a wide circle. Frost, Dusk, fall back to the rear and keep your ears open.
The alphas immediately began spreading out, creating a perimeter around Granite, Winter, and me. Their movements were precise, each wolf taking their role without hesitation. Cedar took the lead, his posture confident and strong. Granite ran closer to the center, keeping me close as we moved through the dense marsh. Frost and Dusk fell into the rear, their heads low and ears swiveling, scanning for any signs of danger. Their presence felt steady, like a safety net trailing just behind us. Cedar glanced back briefly and barked,
Keep those formations tight. Boars don't give warnings before they charge.
Granite let out a low chuckle.
Tight formations, huh? I don't recall you being this organized when you were still tripping over your tail as a pup.
Cedar didn't miss a beat.
And I don't recall you being this slow when you weren't dragging around that grey fur of yours, old wolf.
Granite rolled his eyes and muttered,
Cocky little pup. I don't know how I put up with this.
I couldn't help but stifle a laugh, which earned me a pointed glance from Granite.
Don't encourage him,
he said, though his tone carried more amusement than scorn. Cedar barked again, this time addressing the entire patrol.
Eyes sharp and noses low, this is prime territory for boars, and we're not here to play games.
Granite leaned closer to me as we continued moving.
See that?
He said in a low voice.
That's the sound of a young leader pretending he's in charge.
Cedar's ears flicked back, catching Granite's words. Without turning, he responded,
Keep talking, Granite. Maybe I'll let the pup here take over your spot.
Granite laughed loudly.
Ha! At least she listens better than you do.
Frost barked softly from the rear, his tone calm but firm.
Keep it steady up there. The marsh echoes. You don't want to alert anything.
Granite nodded, his demeanor shifting slightly.
Good call, Frost. Pup.
He said, turning to me.
Stay close. This area can get tricky. Keep your paws light and your ears open.
As we neared a denser section of the marsh, Cedar barked.
All right, circle tighter. We're coming up on a spot where boars might nest. Frost, Dusk, hold the rear. Everyone else, spread out and scent the air.
I sniffed cautiously, my nose picking up the damp scent of moss and mud. Granite stayed by my side, his watchful eyes scanning the trees.
This is where experience comes in, pup. You'll learn to tell the difference between old scents and fresh trails. Take your time.
I sniffed again, my nose catching something faint and musky.
I think I smell something.
I said hesitantly, looking at Granite. Granite lowered his nose to the ground, taking in the scent himself.
Good catch,
he said, his tone serious now.
That's a faint boar trail, but it's old. They were here a few days ago.
From up ahead, Cedar barked.
All right, this area's clear. Next stop is the broken tusk tree. Move out!
The patrol reformed, the alphas spreading out again to maintain their perimeter. Frost and Dusk remained at the rear, their ears twitching constantly. As we picked up speed, Granite glanced at me and said,
You're learning. That's good. But don't let your nose do all the work. Pay attention to the ground, too. Boars leave marks, tracks, torn up earth. Always use all your senses.
Cedar called back.
Let's hope the pup doesn't trip over her paws before we get there. This marsh isn't forgiving.
Granite snorted.
You're one to talk, Cedar. Don't forget how you used to trip over your own tail.
The patrol shared a quiet chuckle, even Frost and Dusk allowing themselves a brief grin. The mood was light, but as we drew closer to the broken tusk tree, the air seemed to grow heavier. Granite's expression hardened, and his voice dropped low as he leaned toward me.
Pay attention now, pup. This next spot isn't just a place to test your nose. It's a lesson in why we stay vigilant.
The patrol quieted as we approached the infamous landmark, the sound of our paws muffled by the soft marsh ground. The atmosphere shifted as we neared the broken tusk tree. Cedar's usual commanding tone became quieter, sharper, and Granite's easy humor faded completely. Even Winter, who always seemed unshakable, seemed to carry a weight in his posture, his head slightly lowered, his ears constantly swiveling for sounds. The Omegas, Frost and Dusk, moved into their positions at the rear, their eyes scanning the surroundings, ears twitching at the faintest noise. The Alphas, Ashen, Slate, and Flint each took calculated positions, their commanding presences evident as they maintained a watchful perimeter. Ashen, the swiftest of the three, paced the edges of the circle, her movements fluid and precise. Her sharp eyes darted between the distant tree line and the patrol, ensuring no threat slipped past unnoticed. Slate held his ground near Cedar, his steady demeanor like an anchor. a calming presence amidst the growing tension. Flint, always ready for action, moved closer to the front, his sharp nose sniffing the air for any sign of danger. Off in the distance, a low grunting and snorting sound broke the silence. I froze, my ears pricked as I tried to pinpoint the source of the noise.
"What's that?"
I whispered, my voice barely audible over the sound of the marsh. Before anyone could answer, I took a cautious step forward, my nose to the ground, trying to catch the scent. My paw sank deep into the mud, and I stumbled, struggling to free myself as the thick, wet earth clung to my leg. Panic rose in my chest as I tugged, only to sink deeper. Granite was at my side in an instant, his powerful jaws gripping the scruff of my neck as he pulled me free with a quick, practiced motion.
"Watch your step, pup,"
he said firmly, his voice low but not unkind.
"This marsh is as much a trap as it is a passage."
I nodded, my ears flat with embarrassment as I fell back into step with him. The patrol pressed on, the circle tightening instinctively as Cedar barked.
All right, let's move. Keep the formation tight until we're out of the area.
We moved swiftly but cautiously, the sound of snorting growing fainter as we distanced ourselves from the threat. Granite fell in beside me, his voice low but carrying a weight of authority as he spoke.
"Do you know why we call it the broken tusk tree, pup?"
I shook my head, glancing at the massive, gnarled tree ahead. Its twisted branches clawed at the sky, and the deep gouges in its bark seemed to tell a story of battle and survival. At its base, a large, weathered boar tusk lay half buried in the roots, a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked in these marshes. Granite's gaze rested on the tree as he continued.
"Long ago, a massive boar roamed this marsh. It was fearless, charging anything that dared to cross its path, wolves, bears, even the tree itself. One day, it met its match. A patrol, led by an Omega, turned Alpha named Flint, lured it here. They used their wits, outmaneuvering the beast and driving it into the deep mud where it couldn't escape. The boar fought fiercely, but its tusk snapped against the tree as it struggled. The wolves ended its reign of terror, but not without loss."
His voice grew heavier, and I noticed his eyes seemed distant, as if he could still see the event unfolding in his mind.
"This tree is a reminder,"
he said.
"It's not just a marker, it's a warning. The strength of the boar wasn't in its size or its tusks, but in its fearlessness. That same fearlessness can destroy a wolf who underestimates it. Always respect the dangers of this marsh. Always stay vigilant."
I nodded, the weight of his words settling in my chest. The patrol moved on, leaving the broken tusk tree behind, its presence lingering like a shadow over our thoughts. As we ran, the Alphas maintained their guard, their sharp eyes and ears ensuring our safe passage. Frost and Dusk remained at the rear, their constant vigilance a quiet reassurance. As we approached the eastern meadow, the golden grass stretched out before us, dotted with scattered patches of wildflowers and small burrows. The breeze carried scents of rabbits, birds, and faint traces of predators. Cedar barked out orders.
Alphas, spread out. Omegas, ears sharp.
The patrol shifted into their respective roles like pieces of a well-oiled machine. The Alphas, Flint, Slate, and Ashen, moved with focused precision, their eyes scanning the distance while their noses worked the wind. Frost and Dusk lingered behind the group, their ears rotating to catch the faintest rustle of danger. Granite fell in step beside me, his watchful gaze like a shield. He gestured toward a patch of flattened grass.
"Go on, pup. What do you smell?"
I bent down, inhaling deeply. The scents were layered. Grass, rabbits, faint traces of a bird, and my fur bristled as my heart skipped.
"Lions,"
I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. Granite's ears perked. His face remained calm but serious.
"Good catch. The scent is old, but that doesn't mean we let our guard down here. Lions are powerful hunters. They can take us out one by one if we're not vigilant. Never face one alone, pup. You wouldn't stand a chance.
His words sent a chill through me, and I nodded, though my mind had already started to wander. The scent had stirred something deep inside, an echo of a memory I had tried not to revisit. Granite noticed my hesitation and tilted his head.
You've encountered a lion before, haven't you?
I hesitated, my tail lowering.
Yes, it was when I was out with Winter.
I admitted.
We were near the forest edge, close to the hunting grounds. I scented something strange, something I couldn't place at first. Winter knew immediately. It was a lion.
Granite's expression darkened, his gaze locking on me.
What happened?
I swallowed hard.
Winter ordered me to go back to camp and get help, but I froze. I thought maybe I could help somehow. Maybe I could prove myself. I didn't want to be an Omega. I didn't want to be a failure.
My voice faltered.
I hesitated, and Winter had to bark at me again before I finally ran. By the time I returned with Wolfgang and his alphas, the lion had already been driven off. They said it must have fled once it realized there were too many of us.
Granite remained silent, his presence steady as I continued.
I didn't even see it. All I had was the scent and Winter's warning. But I could have cost him everything if I hadn't gone back for help. I didn't listen to my mentor because I was too focused on my pride.
Granite let out a low sigh, his voice both firm and measured.
A lion is a force to be reckoned with. Winter trusted you to follow his orders, to bring back the reinforcements we needed, to protect the pack. You hesitated, yes, but you corrected your mistake. That's what matters now.
I shook my head, the weight of the memory pressing down on me.
But I still failed. If I had acted sooner...
Granite interrupted, his tone sharper but not unkind.
No wolf is perfect, pup. We all make mistakes. What defines us is how we learn from them. You were young and foolish, but that doesn't mean you can't grow. Don't let this weigh you down. It won't serve you or the pack.
I lifted my head slightly, meeting his gaze.
I won't make that mistake again,
I said, my voice tinged with determination. Granite's faint smile was brief but meaningful.
Good. Keep your paws to the ground and your senses sharp. And remember, you're not alone out here.
Cedar's voice cut through the air.
This area's clear. Move out to the southeastern marsh.
The patrol reformed, moving as one cohesive unit. Granite's words lingered in my mind as we left the meadow behind, their weight both a reminder and a guide as we pressed on toward the next challenge. Granite's voice broke through the quiet, his usual firmness softened with a teasing edge.
Come on, Pauling. Keep those paws moving, or do you want me to carry you back?
I huffed, rolling my eyes but unable to keep the corner of my mouth from twitching into a small smile.
I can walk just fine, Granite,
I replied, though my aching paws screamed otherwise. He chuckled, the sound warm but laced with the weight of years.
Good, because I'm far too old to be carrying Paulings around these days.
Up ahead, Cedar cast a quick glance over his shoulder, his tone light but leading.
She's doing fine, Granite. No need to coddle her.
Granite's ears flicked toward Cedar, his expression sharpening.
Coddling, huh? Look closer, Cedar. Her paws are dragging, and she's working to keep pace. As leader, you don't just watch the path ahead, you watch your team. Noticing subtleties like this can mean the difference between keeping your wolves safe or losing them.
Cedar's ears twitched at the subtle rebuke, his gaze shifting to me. He frowned slightly as he took in my heavy steps and the effort I was putting into keeping up.
Fair enough,
he admitted, slowing his pace.
All right, everyone, let's take 5.
Granite gave a satisfied grunt, his tone shifting back to his usual command.
Good. Always keep an eye on your team, Cedar. That's how you lead them home.
Winter, who had been trailing quietly behind, gave a curt nod.
Smart call. A break now makes for a stronger finish.
Cedar's tail flicked, a sign of acknowledgement as he gestured to a small patch of soft grass.
Rest here.
He ordered, his voice carrying more confidence now. I dropped onto the grass with a relieved sigh, stretching out my aching paws. Granite settled nearby, his watchful eyes scanning the surroundings as the others rested. After a few moments, Cedar spoke again, his tone firm and steady.
All right, team, let's move. The camp isn't far now, and I want to finish this strong.
Granite stood, his presence as commanding as ever.
You've done well tonight, Pauling. Remember this, strength isn't just about keeping up. It's about knowing when to rest and when to push forward. Now, let's finish this.
I nodded, determination flickering to life again as I stood and followed the patrol. The ache in my paws was still there, but Granite's words echoed in my mind, pushing me forward. The patrol finally arrived at the camp's entrance under the soft glow of the moon. The pup stumbled slightly, her exhaustion catching up with her. Winter bowed respectfully to Granite and spoke in his usual even tone.
Thank you for allowing us on your patrol and for your guidance. It has been invaluable.
Granite nodded, his voice steady yet kind.
Always a pleasure, Winter. She did well for her first moon patrol. Keep sharpening her skills. One day, she may surprise even you.
Winter turned to the pup, his sharp gaze softening just slightly.
All right, pup. You've had a long day and night. Go to the fresh pile and eat. Then get to your den and rest. Tomorrow, we rest. Trust me when I say you'll welcome the reprieve.
The pup lifted her head, blinking through her weariness, and bowed to Winter. She then turned to Granite, offering him the same respectful bow. Granite gave her a slight approving nod in return. Without hesitation, she padded to the fresh kill pile, selecting a small squirrel. As she ate, savoring every bite, the flavors felt richer than they had in moons. Her muscles ached, her paws throbbed, but there was a flicker of pride in her chest. After finishing her meal, she walked to her den, curled into her bedding, and fell into a deep sleep as her head hit the floor.